You are listening to episode number 26. I have a special guest today, and we are going to be talking about improv, you, and business. Stay tuned. So, the big question is, how do ambitious people like us, who grew up listening to the old advice of go to school, work hard for 40 years, and retire when you're old, create a life today that is meaningful, abundant, healthy, and brings joy, while also leading a life that is productive and full of achievement? That is the question, and this is the podcast that will help give you the answers that you're searching for. My name is Del Denny, and welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. Welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. I have a special guest today, an amazing guest. Her name is April Jaffe. April is a business growth consultant, executive coach, and facilitator. She is the founder of Raise Your Game and has created a powerful methodology combining improv acting techniques with business strategies to help clients communicate more effectively and drive growth. Experiential learning allows us to recreate real life business situation in real time and gives individuals a chance to work on specific challenges they face every day. Companies like Google, Nike, American Express have all tapped into the power of improv and its ability to transform their employees. That's why I'm excited to have April on the podcast today. April, welcome.
Oh, Del, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me onto your wonderful podcast.
Well, I'm excited to have you. This is a topic. Improv is such an interesting topic. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us your story, a little background on who April is.
Sure. Who is April? Well,
It's a deep question.
It is. Wow. Well, it's been an interesting journey, and like a lot of us, Del, I've had some different chapters that have brought me to here. But I actually started out as a actress singer with stars in my eyes, and went to the Fame High School in New York, which is kind of famous, and then was on that little journey. And then I had the wonderful experience of falling into the advertising industry, which was really great. And I got an opportunity to work with some of the top agencies and work with, super creative people, and worked on, extremely high profile brands, and in that industry was able to start some companies from the ground up, which just gave me an amazing experience of learning so much and having a very diverse background, and growing businesses, making presentations to people, building relationships, and I had started a number of companies. And like a lot of us, after we're at a place for a while and we're kind of looking at ourselves, I thought, instead of doing this for one company, I could really share my knowledge with, many different companies. So from there, I decided to start my own consultancy, and really enjoyed that I could work with people for as long as they wanted me to share the wealth of experience that I had. And then once we got to a certain point, I could move on to other companies and work with multiple people at the same time. So that was really how I came to be where I am right now. Raise Your Game. I really was always interested in elevating people and taking companies that were good, but helping them to really reach their full potential and grow, and have the opportunity to work with people that were starting out in their career to people who were really already very well established, and just was a really wonderful experience to grow and learn.
So I'm kind of curious, how did you go from, being in the advertising agency world into improv? Where did that come about?
So that was really interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. So I was, doing this job, as I was, sharing with you, and I started to feel a little bit kind of like I need to touch my creativity again. I really missed, being in that environment. So once a creative, always a creative. So I started taking improv classes in the city, and I started to notice that when I was going back to my job, how I was becoming much more agile and how it was really affecting the way I was communicating with clients. I did a lot of phone work, I did presentations. So all of the skills that I was using in improv, I started to really notice how it was really impacting my own performance. And I had that like aha moment, where I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. And I actually was working with a coach who, was talking to me about, okay, what was going to be next. And I know, we are in the business of coaching people, and we also like to be coached because sometimes we want to sort of direct our careers a little bit. And he helped me come to that would be a great way to add to what I was already doing, and sharing this, with a methodology that I sort of came up with incorporating, real business practices and improv together, and how powerful that could be.
As we get into, I asked that question assuming that our listeners know what improv is, but if we were to take it back a little bit and just a baseline, what is improv? Could you inform our listeners a little bit of just what that is?
Sure. So for you who are out there who have not ever been to an improv show, I would encourage you to check it out. But what happens in improv is that one actor gets on stage and he has absolutely no idea what's going to happen. And he comes up with an idea and he throws it out there. And then the other actor is basically picking up on what the first actor has thrown out. So an idea, and he then has to take it in, accept it, and build off of what that person has given him. And pretty much like life, we never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. Life is not scripted, and therefore, in improv, it looks sometimes to the audience like, wow, they're making this stuff up, but it's all just happening moment to moment in real time, and requiring the actors to be extremely present.
Mm, I love that. And I think as you said that, I could hear some parallels with how that applies with business. Things change, things move, things don't go as planned. We have to accept it. We have to roll with it a little bit. So as we get into business and we talk about these business techniques that go along with improv, why is it important to incorporate improv with business?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I mean, I'm so passionate about sharing this with the business world because I feel that there are just so many different avenues and aspects of business and improv that really line up so perfectly. So, from the first thing about being present, I mean, you're meeting a client for the first time, you're establishing a relationship, you really need to be present. You're doing a presentation at for your in your office, and you really need to be present. Somebody may throw out something to you and ask you a question. The technical thing stops working suddenly. Oh my God, what are we going to do? So these are muscles that we need to learn how to flex and use, and people need to kind of become comfortable with the unknown, the curveballs that we're not expecting that then happen. Uh, Active listening. I mean, listening is such a key component to everything that we do. And if we don't listen, we miss like really important information. So obviously in any interaction, whether you're on a sales call or whether you're having a meeting with your coworkers, the ability to really listen actively and take in what they're giving you is just an important component that we really need to
Mhm.
have working for us.
For sure. And that's something that I've I think as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about Will Smith. Will Smith said there's talent and there's skill. Talent is our natural ability, skill is what you work on. And I believe, as someone that is a professional speaker, I've delivered thousands of presentations, quite literally. I've been on stage in front of many, many people, and one of my talents is improv and going with the flow. Or one of my talents is, but I know I can work on that skill set. And that's why I love talking to you, because there's different ways that we can develop that skill set of improv, going with the flow. So what are some of the techniques that you teach when it comes to business and improv?
Well, there's some tenets that we work on. So one of the key things, and a lot of people who are familiar with improv may be familiar with this particular term, but for all of your listeners who are not, is yes and. Yes and is the cornerstone of improv. And what that really means is that you are accepting what is being given to you. So if you are in any situation, in a conversation, and somebody offers you something and you say no, it really just stops the conversation right there. No and but are the two things in improv that you never want to say. But
Mm.
if you say yes and, then you have some place to go. And that's what's really important, is that you are coming up with ideas, if and being innovative. And if you say no to things, then you just shut that idea down. If you're trying to get um, into a conversation and building a relationship with a potentially new client, and they ask something of you and you say no, then that shuts it down. The other thing that's really so key is that, I don't know about you, Dell, but negative energy is something that I think is not something that any of us really kind of are attracted to. And there are people that are just really not aware of the fact that they are saying no, or in improv we would say blocking. So like if somebody was on stage and they were like, hey, it's raining out here, so cold, and then the person got on stage and was like, I don't see any rain, that would just totally kill it. And
Mm.
I think it happens a lot of times in meetings with colleagues. People kind of shut down people's ideas, and that really is a negative and doesn't really allow things to breathe and grow and move in a way in which you can find out new solutions, and problem solve, and also get along with people and collaborate, which is a really big thing.
Yes, and let me add to that. Did you see what I did right there?
I did, and that was so good.
Well, that's something that I use that when I'm up on stage delivering a presentation too, because there's a lot of listeners that have delivered a presentation, whether it's to one person or 1,000 people or anything in between, and they might open it up for questions, and someone says something so off the wall, and like you said, you could say no, and that person feels like an idiot because of that, or I use that same technique and say yes, and let me add to that. So you're not really making them look like an idiot. You still have them on your side. You can kind of just take that conversation to another angle with that. So I love that. Um,
And and another piece on that, that I think is really important. Sometimes when I'm teaching, people are like, well, I don't always want to say yes to everything. And I I get that. This is not meaning to say yes to everything, but there's an energetic acceptance of things. And I think that's what's really important, is that you are accepting and saying, yeah, that's a great idea. And you're not shutting somebody down and making them feel bad. And I think that's what's really important. And you did that so beautifully, when you explained what you do in your talks. And I think that's something that people really could so benefit from, in all kinds of situations that they're in their personal life. Just saying, you want to go to the Chinese restaurant? Yeah, the Chinese restaurant is good. And, I really love that Thai down the block. It's so
Mm.
much better than, no, I don't want to go to the Chinese place.
Yeah, I like that. It just kind of directs the energy where you want it to go. Um, like what's an exercise that we could do if we wanted to develop that skill set, because it is a skill set, because we can't just say it because it sounds too scripted. How do we get it so it flows naturally? Is there some exercises that we can do to develop that skill set?
Right. Well, the truth is, I mean, this is kind of what I do with people one on one or in, some of the group meetings is that you just start out like any exercise, you start out with really being deliberate and saying yes and for people who haven't ever really exercised that muscle, I equate like what we do in improv to being an athlete or an artist. It's about practicing. So people can absolutely get together with a friend if they want to start doing that and being very deliberate about saying yes and then slowly moving into uh, conversations where they're just realizing that they can just be in that conversation in that same way without having to use those words.
I love it. I love it. All right. What else can we do? So improv in business, so important. Yes, and what else can we do when it comes to
So,
improv that helps us out?
so this is great. So one of the second things in improv, which is wonderful, is it's about accepting what other people give you, as you said, and making your partner look good. So that's a really interesting one. Make your partner look good. So in sales, right, it's really important that you make your client look good. So instead of being focused on yourself, putting the focus on the other person, and that's really important. I think a lot of people are very self-involved about what they want to say and how they want to say it, and often are not really looking at the person that they're chatting with and letting them really breathe into the conversation.
I like that.
Yeah. So make your partner look good.
All right. So make your partner look good. Make your client, the people that you're working with, the hero of the story. Make them look better than what they are. Maybe, I guess, is that what we're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, going back to sales, there's that 80-20 rule. A lot of times, people, when they are selling their services to people, often want to just talk about themselves and they're not focused on, really listening to the person that they're actually speaking with. So I think that's like a really key thing. It's putting the attention on the other person.
Gotcha. I really like that. All right. So what else can we do? All right. So we yes, and we make your partner look good. Is there some other strategies to this?
Sure, sure. So, I mentioned earlier, but, we'll just reiterate, active listening. So I think, you know, people, we talked about listening, but when you're actively listening, you're really truly listening to the other person and you don't interrupt them. I think, not interrupting is a really big one that we all have to pay attention to.
I agree. I'm listening. I'm actively listening here. I want to make
I
sure
can
you.
tell that. I can and it's and here's the another piece that I really want to share with everybody. So the key thing about doing this work, it's really increasing self-awareness and really learning how to also, as you're tuning into somebody else, you're also learning how to tune into yourself and watch yourself in a way in which you then are become like a director. So you have to have a certain amount that you're being present. So being present is another one that's really key. So I'm going to say that one again, being present.
Being present. Going back a little bit, talking about listening, it made me think of an interview. I think it was Robert De Niro, and he just said that the best scenes that he's been in, the best movies that he's been in, it's when the actors were really good listeners. They weren't worried about their own line that was coming up next. They weren't focusing on the script. They were listening to the other actors, and then they just flowed into each other. And so that's when I really started noticing how important listening is when it comes to business and acting and presentations. And so I love what you said there.
And, and the thing that's also important is, in all of the things that I'm talking about, it is important to practice. I think that a lot of people, as they're learning and reading books on how to better themselves, which I'm 100% all for, I think what I love so much about this modality and why I'm so passionate about sharing it with, my clients and my individual clients as well, is because we have this opportunity to actually see what does it feel like to really be confident. We work on some of these things. What does it feel like to really listen? And we don't practice in life. I mean, we are just kind of being, which is how we have to be. But if we take the time to actually see what it feels like to feel other than what we naturally feel, I think that that's just an amazing opportunity to grow.
So I've got a question for you. As I'm thinking about improv, and I think people are scared in business, and sometimes because it's the fear of the unknown. That's what improv is. But it seems like those that are really good at improv aren't scared of change. They aren't scared of, just things changing, circumstances around them. So how do we overcome being scared when it comes to improv and business?
I think it's goes back to, it's about the doing. It's about having the experiences and knowing, and knowing educationally in your mind the things that you want to do. So, one of the beautiful things about improv too is, we talk a lot about, getting out of your comfort zone. And truthfully, you know, even the best improvisers and people that do this, we're always reaching into new areas that we haven't been before. And yes, we flex that muscle a little bit more so we're not afraid of doing it. But I think it's really just, I'm going to just encourage people to just dive in, and and when you do, you find out that maybe it's not quite as scary as you thought it would be. I think that's what's really, I just want to encourage people to just go for it. And the more you do these things, the more it doesn't feel as scary, and the more you start to embrace these, the modality of it all.
Hmm. That's so true. And I've learned that is the more experience you have, you can, you can grow upon it. You can build upon it. I remember the first time I ever did a presentation in front of 30 people, I was so scared, so scared. And then 10 years later, getting in front of 100 people, it doesn't make my heart skip a beat. I get up there, deliver a presentation. And the only difference was there was just experience and practice and skill set along the way. And the most important thing is just getting in there and just getting out of your comfort zone, doing it once, and then next thing you know it, all that just adds up and adds up. So I can see what you're saying there. What else do we need to know about becoming a good, developing that skill set of improv? So yes, and make your partner look good, active listening, be in the moment. Is there anything else to this?
Well, I think it's also, it's increasing self-awareness and, learning how to be a director as well as, you know, being present. So you kind of see what's going on. And, here's where like really the business part comes in. What I like to do is that, I take a lot of these modalities that we're talking about, and then now we sort of are talking more specifically about how do you apply it. So I think that it's becoming more of the director of your scenes and realizing that you can direct the outcomes if you incorporate a lot of the things that we've just talked about.
I love that. All right. So I want to put you on the spot. I'm definitely going to put me on the spot. Is there an exercise that we could do together that might help out that improv uh, muscle, so to speak?
Sure, sure. So you know what we can do? One of the things I love doing is we can tell a story. And the beautiful thing about this is that we don't know where the story is going to go. So I love doing this with clients because storytelling is a really big thing now in business. How do you tell a story? It's important to tell your story, and it really shows how we can just create on the spot. So what we're going to do, Del, is we're going to come up with, give me a name of a person.
Jack.
Jack. Okay. And give me a location.
San Francisco.
Okay. And what time of year is it?
Spring.
Great. And do we want to put Jack in a particular era?
Let's do the 60s.
I don't know why, but I had a feeling you were going to say that.
I feel
Okay.
like that was a pretty good time for San Francisco.
I like that. So what I want to just reiterate about this is that we want to be specific and give details. We want to really think about moving the story forward. So these are the things that we're going to do. All right. So I will start. We're going to say like one line at a time, and we're just going to throw it back and forth. Often I do this in a huge group, of people, but I also do this one-on-one with my clients. And this is a great practice to see how you don't know what's going to happen, but here we go.
All right, let's do it.
Once upon a time, there was a guy named Jack, and he was hanging out in San Francisco, and he was so thrilled because he had always dreamed about going there.
And when Jack finally got there, he spent so much time, so much money trying to get to the beautiful place that was called San Francisco. He got to the famous Haight-Ashbury Street, and then he found something to his amazement.
On the floor were these beautiful love beads, and they were sparkling and purple, and he put it around his neck, and he just felt elated. And then he looked to his left, and he saw the most beautiful girl.
This girl was like no one that he's ever seen before. This was the woman of his dreams. She was wearing something beautiful. This dress, the color, it was amazing because it was the same dress that his friend once had back in high school.
And he walked up to her, and he just said, "You are stunning, and I just had to come up to you and say hello. My name is Jack."
And that's when she said, I've had my eye on you this whole time. I saw you walking down the street, and there's something special about you. I'm not quite sure what it is, but the first thought that came to my mind was this.
That guy looks like he loves music, and I am dying to go out tonight and hear some great music. And I was wondering, would you like to come with me?
And Jack was so excited, and that's when he said yes. And from that point on, they were inseparable.
And they decided that because it was love at first sight, that they would run off to Lake Tahoe and get married.
All right, I love it. All right, we'll keep it at that. I like that. That was a great exercise right there. That was awesome stuff. And hopefully you were on edge. We were exercising our muscle there. We're going off script a little bit, but that's awesome stuff. So that's the things that you do with your clients.
I do. I do it with my clients. And there's a lot of really, fun exercises that, that I do. Like for instance, let's say somebody, does need to get up in front of people, often, and maybe doesn't feel so confident about talking about themselves. We might work on that skill, and I might ask them, when was the time in your life that you felt really good and confident? What was one of your most favorite experiences that you had growing up? And so when we reach into these places of feeling good and remembering what it felt like to feel confident, or what it could be as if we weren't, if we are confident even if we're not, that really teaches people how to be other than what they are at the moment.
I love that. All right. So I want to ask you a question here. I ask all of our guests this question. It's a introspection question. It goes like this. April, if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself for reaching your full potential?
What a great question. Do we have like 3 months? um I would I would I would tell her everything is always going to work out for you. I would tell her to be more confident in whatever she does. I would also tell her to seek out more guidance around career stuff. One of the reasons why I'm really passionate about what I do is that I didn't have really a mentor or anybody to kind of tell me how to do things. So, I always was kind of finding my own way.
Mhm.
Well, my life has been one big improvisation. I do think that it is good to get help when you need it and to learn as much as you can so that you can be your best self. So that's what I would tell her.
I love it. So you talked about, helping along the way. You're a coach. You do this for a living. So how can people get in touch with you?
So yes, thank you. So if anybody would like to get in touch with me, if you're an organization and you're working on a connection for your people, especially right now, and you're an individual and you want to uh, become better at public speaking and connecting, you can reach me at April at raiseyourgame.me. You can go to my website and you can really see further all the different ways in which I would love to help you grow and be the best version of yourself or your company.
That's awesome. And I'll definitely include that in the show notes so you can link over to her website. April, thank you so much for coming on the Upgrade Your Life podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Del, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say to everybody, just go out and, really embrace being present and being in the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, April.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Del. Have a great day.
Well, that's it, my friends. Thanks so much for being with us this week. Do you have some feedback that you'd like to share? Well, please leave a note in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes to get automatic episode updates of the Upgrade Your Life podcast. And finally, please take a minute to leave us an honest review and ratings on iTunes. They really help us out when it comes to the ranking of the show, and I make it a personal point to read every single one of those reviews that we get. So please leave a review. I appreciate it, and thanks for listening.